Hey everybody, I promised you a review video for the quiz that is next class, and I kind of didn't deliver over the weekend. For that, I apologize. Yeah, being ill will do that to you, I think. But sorry, while I'm doing this, I'm going to look for a piece of gum because I really want a piece of gum. It doesn't look like there is one. Okay, anyway, sorry. So I want to talk a little bit about the quiz and the content that'll be on it. So this is the unit cover sheet that I gave you way back in the beginning, and this is how I try to run kind of the organization of the units. And what we do here is we organize it by topic. So the quiz is, or assessment, whatever you want to call it, is only on topic one. So this is what you're going to be responsible for being able to do. So we want to be able to compare and contrast, which means similarities and differences between different types of governments, such as, and here are the three: presidential versus parliamentary, unitary versus federal, autocracy or dictatorship versus democracy. And then I gave the criteria for how we want to be able to compare those. So who can participate, the distribution of power, relationship between the executive and legislative authority. And these kind of line up with this. So who can participate is the difference between autocracy and democracy. Distribution of power is unitary versus federal. And then relationship between legislative and executive is presidential versus primary. So basically you want to know what these are, what they tell you about this, and then if basically the compare and contrast component comes into, if you're given a profile of a government, can you determine what type they have and how it might be different if they had different structures? Okay, so real quick, I'll go over the basics of what you need to know and the quiz itself, and yeah, we'll go from there. So first off, slideshows and teams, there's only one note sheet that you have to go off of here, and that is 1.1a. And here's how it works. It's on Microsoft Forms. There's two sections. The first section is what I call a knowledge section. The school district is doing different ways of grading things, and all it really is a reorganization of something that I was already doing. So 2.0 is knowledge, just means do you have the baseline understanding of the vocab and the concepts. 3.0 is the application. So we're looking at, this is C, this is A, in between is B, if you want to think about letter grade terms. So if you get full credit on the 3.0 question, it's only one question. It's a scenario that you have to analyze. Then you're going to receive an A in the grade book. It's a 95% because that's what a 3.0 is. I'll have an opportunity if you want to get up to a 4.0 and get your 100%. That can come at the end of the unit. If you get partial credit from the 3.0 and the 2.0 section completely correct, I'll give you a B, which is a 2.5. If you get totally screw up 3, but you get 2.0 right, you get a C. And then if you totally mess up all of that, then I'm just gonna make you redo it. Okay, we're not gonna have F's in here. Okay, we're gonna keep learning and working and getting better. So that's that. So this is what the 3.0 task is going to look like. We're going to do some other examples of this, and I did this for you last time, so I'm not going to go over this, but this is what you can expect to see. The best way to study for a test is to test yourself in a way that is similar to how the test is going to be. So the test is not going to be this exact example, but it's going to be very, very similar to that. So use that, write yourself different scenarios, log into your favorite AI software, say, give me a scenario that demonstrates different types of government, and then you can try to explain it. I guess that doesn't really work that well. You'd have to already know which types you want. So yeah, maybe don't listen to that. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go over them really quick. This is just a rehash of what we've already learned about, so don't freak out about the complexity. And again, this is all in teams. We already created groups. Where did I start talking about this? Right here. Okay. So I'll start here. So the first way that we structure governments or think about conceptualizing governments, I'm going to get a pen in case I need to draw something. I'm a good drawer. Perfect. Okay. So the first way we think about it is who can participate. And what I did is I kind of drew this. That is a terrible line. Okay. We have more participation by people. More participation by people, less participation by the people. And go over here. So in a democracy, in a direct democracy or a pure democracy, you'd have the most participation by the people, and that would be where the authority is given to the individual citizens of the state. And that means that they all participate in governing all equally. So again, I talked about the only place that this really exists is in a wonderful land known as Minnesota. And there are townships in Minnesota that only operate politically by the town meeting, at least to the extent that they can. Usually they have to follow, state laws. But anyway, in terms of their township, it's done by a town meeting. Whoever wants to go can go and hash it out. The second type is kind of more over here, where there's kind of still power to the people, but it's a little more indirect. That's where I kind of use them interchangeably. So you have a republic, indirect democracy, representative democracy. Basically, the idea here is that the representatives of the people are the ones that are running the government, not the people directly themselves. So usually, not always, but usually this happens by voting. So the voters indirectly participate and the representatives directly participate. So over here, you're going to have your indirect democracies. It's kind of an umbrella term that includes representative democracies, republics, things of that nature. The reason that they're not all the same is because sometimes a republic technically doesn't need to have representatives chosen by a vote, but that's usually what happens. A little political science wisdom for you. And then way over here, you have, I guess technically your oligarchy is going to have a little more participation by the people, but not really. It just means that there's more people involved. And then over here you have the autocracies. Man, this is bad handwriting. I hope you get the spirit of what I'm doing over here, because this just looks terrible. So oligarchy, autocracy, dictatorships, only a few people are able to participate, sometimes called elitism. Dictatorship will be one person. Autocracy is usually one person. A dictatorship is a specific type of autocracy. But again, you don't need to know all the ins and outs of this. Autocracy, dictatorship, they can be interchangeable for you. Okay, that's the first type. Who can participate? Whoops, where did that? Secondly is, how is the power distributed? I like to do this. Usually, we will have a unitary government where basically you have, the national is dictating to the state and local what they have to do. There might be individual local governments, but they really just have to do what the large government tells them to do. You could have a federalist where you have the national government, the natty government, and the state and local governments sharing power. That's what the U.S. does, and a lot of nations do that. So some things just the local government does, some things just the national government does, some things they both do. And then the last one's a confederate, which isn't going to be tested on, but I just figured I would give you the whole complete picture. That's where you have state, and there might be some central power, but there would be very little. Again, there's not a lot of good examples of nations that do this. The U.S. under the Articles of Confederation, which we'll get to later. The European Union is kind of like that, but it's not actually a nation. It's a collection of nations. So European Union, they form this European government, but all the separate countries technically are sovereign in themselves. So that's how they work. But really, these are the two that you need to know about. So over here, the blue are places that have unitary governments. You can see the United Kingdom has a unitary government, and then the green are ones that have, if I'm not too colorblind, federalist governments. Notice Canada, which is still technically part of the UK Dominion, has a federalist government. Anyway, and then the last one is the relationship between the legislative and executive. Again, legislative authority means the power to legislate or make laws. Executive just means you carry out the laws, execute. It's the power to carry out the laws. Judicial, in American government, there is a separate judicial branch, but in some governments, it's just part of either the legislature or the executive. So there's two types. The first is parliamentary. If you have a parliamentary form of government, what you're going to see is the legislature, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people in the legislature like this. That's what those are. Those are people. And what they do is they vote, usually the majority party or whoever's created what's called a coalition. I can tell you more about parliamentary politics later. It's not really important for this quiz, but what they do is they get a majority, and then they nominate someone to be usually it's called the prime minister, and they become the executive. And that's your PM or your prime minister. And then they create like a cabinet that's, again, part of the legislature, and they carry out the laws. So what you have here is this direct connection between the people that make the laws and the person or people that carry out the laws. Okay, they are they're serving at the will of the parliament or the legislature, which means that they could usually remove the prime minister if they don't like what they're doing. Okay. The other type is called presidential, and that's where they're just separate. Okay. So again, you'd have this legislature that has a whole bunch of people, and totally independently, you would have the selection of a separate person or people, I guess, which would be the president usually, and they would have to kind of work back and forth together. Okay. Because this person is going to have to execute the laws of this group of people. And if this group of people doesn't like how they're doing it, they can't just remove that person unless there's some specific constitutional way of doing that. So that's going to be how they kind of have to share power and work together. So once again, that's an oversimplification. There's a lot of nuance to this, but for our purposes in 10th grade American government, I think we're good. So those are the three types. Okay, once again, who's making the laws, who's carrying out the laws, who is, I'll keep them. What's the relationship between the national and the state and local governments, and then who can participate. I apologize, my mouth has been really dry because of COVID and everything, and you probably heard my lips smacking. I just realized, or my tongue smacking because I have a cough drop in. I really apologize if that was distracting, but hopefully that just gives you a nice little overview, and we can do some practice problems as well, and just think about, do you know those 6 terms basically, or those, not 6 terms, but those 3 different ways that we can organize governments and how each concept falls underneath them. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. Let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you later, and that'll be it for this.